Hi and welcome back. For this video we're heading up to a local beauty spot called Magpie Mine. It's over near the town of Bakewell and it's a great spot for photographing sunrises and sunsets. For today we went out nice and early, 5 o'clock start, and got a nice sunrise. I'll show the picture on screen now and then walk you through how we got there. So sadly not too much to show on the journey there. It was pretty much like this the whole way, very dark at 5 in the morning. So in terms of equipment for a sunrise shot, warm clothes is probably the biggest thing. Make sure you've got lots of layers and you don't get freezing. If you get cold, you'll shake. If you're using a tripod, I suppose you can shiver, but stay nice and warm. So I've got a base layer on today, as well as the normal clothes and the armour for the bike. So this image was made up of 5 separate exposures. They do have some things in common. The aperture was set to f11 for all of them. The ISO was set to 800 for all of them as well. That gave us a nice balance between the sharpness in the foreground and the background with the small aperture, and also enough light gathering at ISO 800. The shutter speed was varied. The slowest speed we used was 1/60th of a second, which is quite a slow shutter speed. To do that handheld is difficult without image stabilization. We also had a 125th of a second, a 250th of a second, 1/500th of a second, and the last one was 1,000th of a second. They were all shot single, and our shutter mode was electronic, and our subject to detect was set to none. That really is all the settings you need for this one. So it was a lovely morning up at Magpie Mine. The sunrise was beautiful and there were some great opportunities for silhouettes. I was tempted to use a silhouette image, but the combination ended up more appealing. So great views of the rolling countryside, and the mine itself is spectacular to see in the mornings. The light on the front of the mine was really nice as the sunrise kicked in too. Okay, so this image is going to be a combination of 5 different images, getting progressively darker. There's 1 which will be the base, 2 pulling out probably the bulk of the sky, 3 nearer the horizon, 4 around the sun and the clouds, and 5 the sun itself. We'll start with the brightest image. That's going to be our base, and we're going to reference all the others from that. So we'll go to the next image, select all with Control A, copy it with Control C, and then back to our original image, Control V to paste. Now when you paste it in Photoshop, it pastes it as a new layer, so the original is underneath. So we'll do that with all 5 images to start with. Okay, now we've got all 5 layers into the one image. We can start aligning them. So to do that, I zoom in closely on an object that sticks out, in this case the chimney. I'll turn the next layer on, and I can see it's offset, and at that point I can start to move the image around to put it where it needs to be. Okay, there's a bit of rotation in this one as well, you can see. So I'll use free transform, Control T, to get rid of that. Okay, we've got those images pretty well aligned now. So what we're going to do is first turn on the next layer up, so the next darker image, and choose which bits we want to take out of it. So I think the foreground is quite good for exactly that, taking out the foreground. So we'll brighten that up a little bit first. So I'm just going to shadows and highlights. And I don't want to go too far with this because we're going to have quite a dark sky at the end of it in places. So I'm just going to brighten this until it starts to show the green. And I might color correct a little bit, so that'll just boost the vibrance a bit. That will do on shadows and highlights. I'm going to press Control M to bring up curves and just boost the lower half of the curve again. Okay, that will do. So that will be our base image. Now I'm going to select with the quick selection tool everything below the horizon basically. and I will include the buildings. Now, that's going to be awkward for us, but the good news is we'll be able to pull a silhouette of it from an upper image, so we're not going to have to worry about it just yet. Okay, so I think we've got everything in the foreground that we want to keep. So what I'm going to do is pop to the next layer and create a layer mask, and it will do the layer mask based on that selection. We can use this to just check that we've got everything that we want selected. Fine with that. Obviously, we acknowledge that the wheel and pulley isn't in scope. And now we want the opposite of that for this mask. So I click on the mask itself and go to Image Adjustments, Invert. And that will preserve everything above the horizon. Now, we will end up with some ghosting and some strange effects here on the horizon. So we'll have to deal with those. That's just due to the selection itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm clicking on the mask. If I show the mask, you'll see it's a bit flaky around here. So I'm going to set a brush reasonably small, 35 pixels. I've got a soft edge on it. And I'm going to paint in on the mask. Okay, so if we turn layer 2 off, that's what we started with layer 2 on. So I'm going to go to the layer mask. If you hold Alt and click on it, it will show you the mask. And you can see here where I've painted in the trees and a few other little tweaks. Grab that, copy it, and then create a new layer mask for our third layer and paste it in there. So essentially just duplicating that layer mask. So then we've got to decide if there's anything in layer 2 that we want to keep. Layer 2 has a nicer top of the image with the fade out of the sky. Layer 3 brings it in really quite dark. So what I'll do is I'll take layer, well, it's called layer 2, but it's the third layer in the image. So I'll take layer 2's mask and I'll use a very large brush, so 1500 pixels with a soft edge, and I'm going to set the opacity to 19%, about 20 is where I was after, and I'm going to use a black brush, and I'm just going to start bringing in some of the sky from layer 2. And by using that large brush, you can make these big changes and they don't look too unnatural. Layer 3, the fourth layer in the image. So that brings the sun in better. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'll create a layer mask. So I'm going to go to the paint bucket tool, G, and black as my color, and I'm going to paint the whole mask black. So that gets rid of all of it. I'm going to press B for brush and X to switch to white. Now I'm still on my 19% mask, so it's taking a fairly light change. So I'm going to set my opacity quite low. I'm going to go to 10%, and I'm going to go slightly smaller with the brush, and be about 500 pixels, and then just start bringing in a little bit of the orange of the sunset from this layer. Okay, I'm going to go for a bigger brush now and fade it a little bit. That will do. And then our top layer, it's got a really good sun, but not much else we want. So we'll do the same thing. We'll create a layer mask, G for the bucket, X for black, get rid of everything, B for a brush, X for white. And then this time we'll go for a 400 odd pixels, low opacity will be at 5%, and then we're going to just bring in some of that really dark sun. I'm making sure I don't just go over one tiny part of the image because that does look unnatural. I'm trying to feather out how much of it I'm pulling in. Okay, let's turn that mask off. Okay, that's about all I'm going to get from that. Okay, I think it's time we fix our crop because everything's a bit skewed. So we'll keep it as large as we can, just getting rid of all the misalignments between the images. Right, we'll turn all layers off except the bottom. So with layer 2 on, darkens the sky a bit more than I'd like. So we'll go to the layer mask for that one, and we'll go for a black color brush, which is very big, 2,500 full pixels. We'll go to about 20% on that, and we're just going to brighten up, especially the right hand side of the sky, which is quite dull. Okay, so layer 1, layer 2, okay. Layer 3, I'm okay with that, but I think I still want to brighten bits of the sky. So again, just using black on the layer mask, and that's pulling the sky up. Layer 4 needs a bit of feathering. Okay, just making it look natural. And final layer, just bringing out the detail at the bottom. Now you see it looks a little bit unnatural there. So we'll tweak that a little bit. We'll look at the actual layer mask itself by pressing Alt and holding it down. I'm going to use a fairly big brush, about 1200 pixels, and I'm just going to tone that down a little bit and see how that looks. Still a little bit unnatural, so I'm just going to do a little bit more. Okay, I think that's better. I think we can merge this into one image now. So select all the layers, right click, choose merge layers. And now we've got one image to work from. I'm gonna start by cropping it down to a more sensible size. Now we're into normal image editing. So I'm going to duplicate that layer, and I'm going to start with vibrance and saturation. So the vibrance will punch the green and orange up a bit. So we'll have a tweak with that. Okay, and the saturation will make a much bigger difference. My general rule is no more than half the saturation to vibrance. So vibrance is 24, saturation will be no more than 12. In reality, that's plenty at 4. So we'll turn that off and back on. Maybe saturate it a little more. Okay, I'll put that up another 5. Turn that off and on. Yeah, that's much more pleasant. Still got too much sky. We can gradient it and pull that down, but I don't really want that in this image. I'm looking for a brighter image. So I'll crop that in again. I think I like that. We'll duplicate the layer, and we're going to go for shadows and highlights. So image adjustments, shadows and highlights. And we'll pull the highlights down a tiny bit and pull the shadows up a tiny bit. Okay, and then I'm going to do, as I did before, I'm going to curves. I'm going to pull the bottom half of the curve. I'm going to make quite a dark image. I'm going to duplicate that layer, and then I'm going to duplicate it again. I'll call that one 1, and the second one 2. Okay, so 2 of the same layer. I'm going to turn off the top one. Now on the second layer we duplicated, I'm just going to make that quite dark. So I'm pulling the curve down. Then on the layer above, I'm just going to bring in the buildings. So I've selected them all. I create a new layer mask, and then I'm going to turn that layer on. Okay, so that's just brightened the buildings up. It's actually darkened everything else, but it appears as though the buildings are bright. Okay, I think I'm going to do a slightly different way of. I'm going to use the dodge tool on shadows at about 20%. So what I'll do is I'll quick select the buildings again, just to make sure when I use the burn tool, I don't accidentally start brightening up other things next to the buildings. This will just set me an edge. Okay, and then we'll go to our burn tool, and we'll just we can use a bigger brush now, and that will give us a more natural effect. Okay, we're just brightening these up to what looks right. There are dark patches in this wall, and that's okay. I don't want it to look unnatural when we finish, so we've just got a bit of overspill onto the chimney, so I'm just going to select that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool, and that will let me draw a straight line. So I'm only looking to modify what's in that section there. And then I'm going to use the clone stamp, and I'll just grab something next to it, and I'll pull that down with colours adjacent to it. Now I'll zoom in and get rid of that little bit there as well with a hard small brush. Okay, and we can do the same thing up the top here, so just have a straight edge, and then clone stamp, and get rid of that aliasing we've introduced. The other side won't be very noticeable. I want to brighten up the grass a little, and I can do that again with curves. And I'm going to play with contrast now as well. So by increasing the contrast, so as we raise the contrast, it really does make the scene come alive. I'm going to lose a lot of this dead space, which doesn't really have anything to add. Okay, so that's looking good. The balance of the picture with the sun on one side and the buildings on the other is okay. I think we've got a bit too much grass in the foreground, so I'm just going to trim that down and make this a very wide, narrow image, this one. So I can go Tools, Sharp, and then Unsharp Mask. I'm going to go to about 90% on this. Just tidy that up a little bit. So if we just look at the original image and compare that to what we've got, you can see it's quite a dramatic change. So I'm just going to use a little HDR toning on this. So image adjustments and then HDR toning. I'm probably not going to go quite that far with it, but I will bump the detail up quite high. It's 30% by default, and I really want the bricks to stand out a bit. I'll take the strength down from 0.5 to 0.2, and I'm going to drop the saturation from +20 to about +5, I think. Yeah. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like. It takes a few seconds to apply. So before, after. I think I'm happy with that. I will bump the contrast up a little bit more now to compensate. Okay. Again, the before image when we started, and the current image. I'll come back to that in 5 and see if I still like it. Okay, returning to this, yeah, I think I like that image. It's quite nice. I will have a little play with selective colour. I might just boost the sunset a little bit. Okay, so we'll do the before and the after. So lots of tweaking for some very small changes. I may put a gradient on the top as well. Yeah, maybe I will. Okay, I think we'll call that done. So I hope you enjoyed that one. We showed some of the complexities of combining multiple images together and some ways of dealing with that. The final image is quite presentable. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want more content of a similar nature, please do subscribe. Thanks.